Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the United States investigating an Indian-manufactured eye drop that may have caused a bacterial outbreak in the country. We also talk about India's first underwater metro rail being constructed in Kolkata. But first, we talk about the ongoing tensions between the two Shiv Sena factions in Maharashtra. Last year, senior Shiv Sena leader Eknath Shinde had revolted against his own party, took the majority of the MLAs with him and formed a new faction. This faction then allied with the BJP and formed a new government in Maharashtra. And Eknath Shinde became the chief minister. And earlier this year, the Election Commission even allowed the Eknath Shinde faction to use the original Shiv Sena party symbol of a bow and arrow. But even then, both sides have been fighting over who the real Shiv Sena is. Is it the Eknath Shinde faction or the Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray faction? Here is Indian Express's Mohamad Thaver telling us more about it.
Because see, Shiv Sena normally has a good ground presence. It has a lot of its party workers. They have Shiv Sena shakhas. So because of that, there have been certain areas where we've seen a lot of infighting between them, fights between the two factions, and all that has been going around since the last year, because both are these parties that have these hardcore Sainiks who are followers, and now suddenly there's a split down the middle, which has led to a lot of fights online on social media platforms as well as physical fights. So that there has been this tense relation between the two factions ever since last July when the Shinde government came into power in the state.
And this they did, of course, along with the BJP. But when talking about these tensions, Mohammed tells us about this one incident involving Roshni Shinde, who is from the Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray faction, also called the UBT faction.
Now, she had uploaded a post on Facebook which Shinde camp followers felt was derogatory to Eknath Shinde. Now, what happened is that the women party workers of the Shinde faction, they knew this woman. They actually went to her workplace, which is based in Thane. And she has alleged that she was beaten up she was slapped by the Eknath Shinde party workers for putting up the post. Then this woman, Roshni Shinde, got admitted to the hospital. So everyone thought that, okay, now there would be an FIR registered against the women who attacked her. But surprisingly, what happened is that 2 FIRs were registered against Roshni Shinde. Based on her complaint, only an NC was registered against the opposite side. Now, an NC is not as serious as an FIR because in an NC, the police, even if they have to arrest or carry out further investigation, they need court's permission.
So wait, even though she was the one who got slapped, 2 FIRs were filed against her instead?
Yeah, so they registered 2 separate FIRs based on 2 social media posts that she had put up. One they said was against the BJP and one against Eknath Shinde. So they registered 2 FIRs against her, and the very root of the problem that she had allegedly been assaulted by the Shinde camp workers, in that only a non-cognizable offence was registered. Later, when a lot of pressure was mounted, the police approached the court saying that we want to further investigate the non-cognizable offence. But originally, only a non-cognizable offence was registered, which did come as a surprise to a lot of people. And this also led to Uddhav Thackeray came and met Roshni Shinde. The next day, Aditya Thackeray and all, they held a protest near the Thane police commissionerate, where they alleged that the Thane police is absolutely hand in glove with the Shinde Sena, and that even when Uddhav Thackeray came to meet the Thane police commissioner Jaijit Singh, the commissioner was not in his office. Eventually, then, the commissioner met Aditya Thackeray, but there was still this feeling that the police is kind of siding with the Shinde faction.
And now what is important to note is that her case is not alone. In Thane city, just outside of Mumbai, this has happened to a number of other opposition leaders. In fact, an analysis done by Mohammed found out that since Eknath Shinde became the chief minister of the state, 25 FIRs have been filed against opposition leaders in Thane alone.
Yeah, so see, the thing is that when we went through the reported cases, we found that because frequently there were FIRs being registered on social media posts, which was a bit odd. So when I went through the details, we found that, 26 FIRs. In fact, 25 FIRs were against opposition party leaders, basically Uddhav's Shiv Sena, NCP and Congress. And one FIR was against a rapper who had, put out a song which they felt was mocking the Shinde Sena. Now, what stands out for me, one, is that of the 26 cases, 11 cases were registered in a single incident, which is not the norm. As per the law, if there has been a crime, there has to be one FIR. But the former NCP MP, Anand Paranjpe, he had led a protest march and in which they had slogans against Shinde, etc. But for that, they registered 11 different FIRs in various police stations in Thane Commissionerate itself, which was odd because one, the cops know what the rule of law is. Eventually, Anand Paranjpe went to the High Court and the High Court pulled up the Thane police saying, y'all will not learn till the time we fine y'all and y'all have to pay the fines from your own salaries. Then they said, oh no, we will close the other 10 cases and we will just investigate one case. Now, the question is why register 11 offences in the first place for the same incident when you know the law pretty well? So that was an odd thing.
He says the other thing that stood out for him were the high number of cases where FIRs were registered for social media posts and banners that were put up by those in the opposition.
In such a scenario, these incidents are going to happen, and we have seen that on social media platforms. People do, all political parties, there is a lot of muckraking on each other. So to start registering FIRs in these cases, kind of stood out for me. And also these were not just simple NCs. They were registering proper FIRs. In most cases, this FIR was under section 153A, which stands for creating divide between different communities, different castes, different groups, which didn't prima facie appear to be the case. If I have put up a social media post against a particular politician, to book that under 153A did seem a bit stringent, and a lot of these cases the courts instantly granted bail saying this offence is not made out. So these are the few things: registering multiple offences for the same incident, registering FIRs on stringent charges for a social media post. These are the things that did stand out for me when I started going through the FIRs that have been registered since the last year.
And Mohammed, talk about the significance of this happening in Thane. Why are so many FIRs being filed from the Thane city?
See, that is an important part of this entire story because since a long time, so the CM Eknath Shinde, he is a legislator. He's been elected from Thane. His son Shrikant is also an MP from Thane. And for the longest time, Thane is seen as the bastion of Eknath Shinde. He stays there. He is born and brought up there. So even when Shinde had not separated from Uddhav Sena, it was widely believed that all decisions regarding Thane, be it postings of IPS officers, posting of commissioners, postings of even senior inspectors, were done in agreement with Eknath Shinde. In fact, Ajit Pawar in a recent interview said that even when, the Shinde Sena MLAs were leaving, when the split actually happened and Uddhav told police officers to not allow them to leave, the Thane police kind of sided with Shinde and allowed them to leave. So in that sense, it is generally believed that Thane, the cops, the administrators are very loyal to the Shinde faction because he has for the longest time had a say in which officers should be selected. So when he was with the Thackeray's gave him that. And now that he is the CM, even in this government, it is widely believed that he calls the shots when it comes to Thane. So hence, the police registering kind of so many offences against the rival political parties in an area where it is widely believed that Eknath Shinde calls the shots also kind of gives the perception that, okay, they are going by what Eknath Shinde wants because they know that at the end of the day, their postings and other things depend on what Eknath Shinde believes to be the case. So this perception, it further kind of adds to the fact that so many FIRs being registered only mainly against the opposition party members.
Right, and Mohammed, a few police officers even told you that in some cases they directly got calls from politicians asking them to register FIRs. So talk about what your sources have told you in this regard.
Yeah. So see, these are, we could say, claims that are made by some officers we spoke to. So some of the officers that I spoke to, they claimed that, especially in political cases, like somebody has put up a social media post and all of that. In these cases, at times, they do get calls from certain politicians and they have to take their inputs in consideration while registering an FIR or to decide whether an FIR has to be registered or no. In fact, a senior officer I spoke to, he said that there are times when even they are not in the loop. This officer said that, suddenly in the morning when he sees that FIRs have been registered, he's called up the senior inspector, and the senior said that, boss, we have got a call from the top, and based on discussions we had with them, we went ahead with the FIR. So the senior officer claimed that in some cases even they are not in the loop. So this is what generally the feeling was amongst, officers from Thane police.
And what did the Thane Commissionerate and the Eknath Shinde government say when you spoke to them about this problem?
So see, the other side is that one cop I spoke to, he said that even, for example, if for a moment we believe that so many FIRs are registered for political reasons, his reasoning was that in majority of these cases, the FIR has been registered, but we have not gone ahead and made any arrests. We have not filed charge sheets in the case. So even if an FIR is being registered for a political reason, there is no further action that is being taken. So hence, it is not that big an issue. When we spoke to the commissioner, he said that when we get an initial information, if somebody comes to a police station and gives a complaint, we have to register an FIR. But it is only after investigation, and if we find that there is some evidence backing the claims, only in those cases do we file charge sheets or we arrest people. Otherwise, we don't. But as per law, we are duty bound to register an FIR if someone approaches us. We also reached out to the Shinde Sena spokesperson Kiran Pavaskar, who also said that not all cases against opposition leaders have been registered only after our government came in. He said that there have been FIRs registered against, for example, NCP leader Jitendra Ahad, even before we came into power, and during the MVA, he had beaten up an engineer and an FIR was registered, and in fact, they had not even provided evidence so that, Ahad could be let off easily. So his claim was that it's not that only during our rule FIRs are being registered against opposition leaders. That has happened in the past as well. So it should not be linked to us when FIRs are also being registered now.
And next we talk about an Indian eye drop that may be causing severe eye infections in the US. This is the Esri Care Artificial Tears, an over-the-counter eye drop which is manufactured by the Chennai-based Global Pharma Healthcare. This eye drop is under investigation in the United States because authorities suspect that it may have led to a serious widespread bacterial outbreak which has even resulted in the death of at least 3 people. In this segment, my colleague Anwiti Singh speaks to Indian Express's Anonna Dutt about it.
So, Anonna, there is an investigation going on in the United States right now regarding a bacterial infection, which probably originates from these Indian eye drops. Could you begin by telling us the backstory of this investigation?
So this cases of bacterial infection, at least for India, was first highlighted when this company, that is a Chennai-based Global Pharma Healthcare, they withdrew their eye drop from the US market. And this was done after a cluster of cases of eye infections and even bloodstream infections were first linked to a very antibiotic resistant bacteria, which they thought was because of this eye drop. So to reach the conclusion, the CDC and FDA were investigating the matter, and they asked the people who had the infection, what are the products that they use, how did they get it? And a lot of them said that they had used this an over-the-counter eye drop. There were like some 10 things that they had named. But this Esri Care is the name of the product that the Chennai-based company makes, and that was one of the most common ones named. So that's how the investigation for this infection and whether it was linked to this eye drop that started.
Now you mentioned CDC and FDA. These are monitoring bodies, right?
So yes, CDC is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, which is equivalent to our National Center of Disease Control. And then FDA is the Drug Regulatory Authority, Food and Drug Administration, which is equivalent to our CDSCO.
Right, and now coming to the infections, could you talk about what kind of issues they were causing in people?
So the major challenge with the infection is that it's resistant. So once you get the infection, it's very, very difficult to treat it because the most strong antibiotics don't work against it. Symptomatically, mostly people would start with likely an eye infection because so far what we have reported. So as per the last report, which came out, I think in March, they said they have found 68 cases of the infection across 16 states. And of these people, at least 3 have died. So that's because of the infection actually traveling into the bloodstream from the eye. Then 8 people have faced vision loss because of the infection. And there have been 4 cases where the eyeballs needed to be removed to prevent further infection. So that's what we know so far.
Right. And have the CDC and FDA found out about the extent to which these infections are either related to the eye drops or not?
So right now they have not said conclusively that this is because of the eye drop. And there is one main important reason for that. That's because as per the rules and regulations in the United States, the CDC tests for in any cases of, such contamination or any outbreaks, CDC always tests the opened bottles of a drug, while the FDA actually investigates the closed or the sealed packs. So now we have been in touch with the CDC and they said that in the opened bottles of this eye drop Erzicare, they found this particular contaminant, and it is very peculiar. This contaminant, this particular bacteria has 2 genes which are resistant to the antibiotic carbapenem, which is a third-line antibiotic, very strong antibiotic, and this bacteria contains 2 genes which are resistant to this drug. And the US has never had this infection before this. So the sudden cluster of this peculiar infection meant that they had to look for the source. And what they found is that this bacterial contaminant was present in multiple lots of the opened bottles. But now they cannot say that it is for sure a contamination that happened during manufacturing, because FDA is testing the unopened bottle. So if they find the contamination even in the unopened bottles, then they can say that yes, it came from the manufacturing site. But for now, what the CDC is saying that it of course looks as a point source contamination because it's a very particular bacteria which has caused several cases across several states in the United States. So it's a widespread in nature. So there has to be some one point source which could have infected all the people across all these different states, which is why they suspect it is a contamination that happened during manufacturing of these eye drops.
Okay, so right now we have US authorities investigating this case. But has India also initiated an investigation?
So the day that the news came of this voluntary recall, a team of drug inspectors from the central CDSCO as well as the state drug controller rushed to their manufacturing facility, which is close to Chennai. And they did an inspection, collected samples from the inspection site. And according to the sources in the health ministry, these samples were found not to have any of the contaminant. So they tested what is known as the control sample, which is like samples from the same batch which is maintained by the company, the same batch that was exported. The company maintains it as a quality control process. So they have tested the control samples as well as samples of raw materials that were present in the facility, and they did not find this contamination.
And you earlier mentioned that the US is investigating both the opened and unopened bottle of the eye drops. Are they also investigating the Indian manufacturing unit in Chennai?
So yes, in the case of this Chennai drug manufacturer, there was again the CDSCO, which is our drug regulator, had stopped manufacturing of all eye products by this company. And after this action was taken, there was also an investigation by the US FDA, which is their drug regulator. And they found quite a few deficiencies, not so much as the contaminant in the product, but they found deficiency in processes such as, not validating a process to see whether there is contaminant, or, the cleaning mechanism or the sterilizing mechanism not being at par with, say, the US regulator. So there were deficiency in the processes found, but not contamination as such.
And Anonna, recently we had also seen another Indian manufacturer come under the scanner, when cough syrup-related deaths were reported in Gambia and Uzbekistan. Could you talk about what the drug regulators here had done after that?
So, there was a Chintan Shivir after all these incidents had come forward where the drug regulators actually met and discussed of ways to, improve the regulatory mechanism. And there were several ideas that were put forth which are likely to happen over the years. But for now, the government initiated a risk-based assessment of these companies. So the companies that have been highlighted where, a lot of the products that fail the quality tests or the random market tests that the CDSCO does regularly. So if the companies that have failed a lot of these tests, the inspections were done in these companies. Around 200 companies were identified and 76 were investigated in the first phase, out of which the license of 18 were cancelled. So that's just a way of making the regulatory system more robust.
And in the end, we talk about India's first underwater metro line. Earlier this month, the Kolkata Metro Rail Corporation, or the KMRC, started the trial runs of its first underwater metro line, which connects two major cities in West Bengal, Kolkata and Howrah. And last week, Indian Express's Sweety Kumari joined the rail corporation in one of the test runs.
It was really thrilling to see a metro rake passing under the tunnel underwater.
In this segment, Sweety speaks to my colleague Utsa Sarmin about this underwater line and the challenges that this project has been facing.
So Sweety, begin by telling us, when did this project start?
So basically, the project was planned almost a decade ago, probably in 2012 or 13. But it took really long, and East-West Metro, which we are talking about, is already partially operational. And for underwater project, the constructions and all the works are mostly completed, 80% of which has already been completed. And now the finishing work is going on, and they are also doing the trial runs. So for a decade, they have been working on this project.
Right. And can you tell us why the KMRC decided to build an underwater metro line? Why did they see a need for this?
Yeah, usually we see that whenever there's a metro project, either it's elevated corridors or underground ones. In this case, the East-West Metro construction, basically the idea is to connect the Kolkata and Howrah twin cities, and the metro authorities wanted to connect these two cities because they are very, very populated, and there's regular to and fro from both sides. And these twin cities are separated by River Hooghly. So there was no other way. If they had planned for a metro underground, it would have been a really long stretch, and technically it wasn't possible. So why not underwater metro, which is like a milestone for the city and India too.
Right. And as we heard from you earlier, going on one of these test rides, it was an exciting experience for you. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, so initially they were not calling it a trial run. It is test ride. So initially they were only allowing senior officials of railway authorities and, those who were involved with the project from the day ones. They were taking this ride, checking everything, whether, it was possible for the rakes to move in that stretch smoothly. So this has been a test ride. So it started off on April 9th, and then they decided to allow some of the medias to take the test ride and see how smooth the journey was. Initially, when they started with the first test ride, that too, as per officials, that too was smooth, and since the 9th April, they have not faced any challenges, and it's going smooth. They expect that by December, the test rides will be completed.
Okay, so as of now, there have not been any problems. But considering the fact that this is the first underwater metro line in the country, what challenges did the KMRC face during the project?
See, this entire project has been filled with challenge, and this is the first time that any metro will pass under the river or say So basically, tunneling under the water was the toughest task that technicians and system engineers were telling us. And apart from that, the entire east-west metro corridor connects from the eastern side of Sector 5, Salt Lake area to Howrah Maidan. It goes till Howrah Maidan. This entire area and the areas it covers is very congested and has lot of heritage buildings. So it was basically a very daunting, very tough task for metro authorities to ensure that when they are doing the tunneling work or when they are doing an underground metro station, constructing underground metro station, no building which are very heritage and dilapidated, don't develop any cracks. So the entire project has been a challenge for them.
Yeah, and we understand that they have also been facing issues in the Bow Bazaar area. But Sweety, do the engineers foresee any other problems like water seeping through in the tunnels, for example?
No, KMRCL had already boarded one globally, the best of engineers. So basically, they used best of TBMs to complete the tunneling work. Several measures were taken to prevent water inflow and leakages in the tunnel. Concrete mixes composed of fly ash and microsilica were used so that, there is less of water inflow. When we talk about the tunnel, the inner walls of this tunnel are of high quality that the engineers were telling us, and which were sealed together using a complex grouting process, they say. So all the technical things were taken. They had assured that there was there were no such challenges. Now that the project is almost complete, I have noticed that metro authorities are not very keen on discussing what they faced. Rather, they are saying that we are proud of the project and happy that it has come to an end, and now passengers will be able to enjoy this underwater metro services.
Right, so now that the test runs have started, do we know when people can actually start using this underwater metro service?
So they have already partially started the project, like East-West Metro corridor is partially running from Salt Lake Sector 5 to Esplanade. Now the trial runs are on from Esplanade till Howrah Metro Maidan station. And once the problem in Bow Bazaar area is resolved, then that East-West Metro project will be running smoothly. And that is expected by the next year in the month of May. However, when I say this, let me tell you that the stretch between Esplanade to Howrah Maidan will start from December 2023 itself.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Anwiti Singh, Utsa, Sarmin and me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.